prove yourself, of not being believed, or of being judged, that can really, break people down.
Many suffering in silence or being ignored.
The mainstream don't understand his invisible disability, and he gets put down as naughty. That would cause him to have meltdowns.
The battle to get the benefits they deserve.
You are made to feel like you are lying, feel like you have to beg to exist.
And the pioneering scheme getting people into work.
I can forget things, so I have a notebook and I write things down. This is my method of overcoming.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. It's estimated that 12 out of the 14 million people living with disability are dealing with one that's not visible. In this film, we meet people whose day-to-day lives are affected from getting a diagnosis to the type of education or job they're able to do. And it's a subject our reporter Simon Mossin knows all too well.
My day job is reading the news. It's something I love, but it's a struggle every day because I live with chronic pain. I was a foreign correspondent when I had an accident 8 years ago. Our top story. My life changed overnight, and I'm far from alone. Millions struggle daily with conditions that can't be seen, from autoimmune diseases, ADHD, illnesses like ME to Crohn's, or mental health and brain conditions. And from what I've experienced, it's clear that people need to know more about these hidden disabilities. James has dystonia, a neurological disorder. He's 38 years old.
My speech is slurred and disoriented, and I find it hard to eat.
It causes spasms and contractions, but James wants people to understand his condition, so started a social media account. He's now had 14 million likes on TikTok.
Yes, I'm always smiling. On social media, I get a lot more love than hate.
People have said some really awful, outrageous things.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
Horrendous. I'm a lady who met me. You are a good-looking lad. Shame about your disability.
Life wasn't always like this for James. His condition seriously began to deteriorate 14 years ago, and he was forced to quit his job as a heating engineer.
To have no name to my condition is hard, but I felt like I fake. Mentally hard.
Now he's retrained as a fitness coach with a mission to focus his help on people with various disabilities to get physically stronger and have a more positive outlook.
It makes me so happy. I can't explain it. It gives me a purpose in life.
People with invisible conditions are more likely to also have a mental health condition too. And it's that day after day grind of having to prove yourself, of not being believed, or of being judged, that can really, break people down.
After my own accident, I was out of work for 4 years. Often I was in agony or numb and unable to leave my house. Like millions of others with a hidden disability, I struggled to get an official diagnosis, which delayed me getting the support I needed and for the long-term pain I feel every day. But for some, help can come in a potentially unexpected form. Ian's autistic, and this is who supports him as he goes about his daily life. His special assistant's cat, Chloe.
One of the ways in Chloe helps me is that she's something consistent in my environment. She distracts me, I guess. I don't know exactly what happens, but she reduces the sensory overload. She does make me less anxious.
Growing up, Ian wasn't aware he was autistic.
There was no mention of the word autism. He always did well academically, but socially, he didn't particularly want to mix with the other children.
Clarity came for Ian with a diagnosis 2 years ago, aged 49. He also suffers from anxiety.
I think in many ways a relief, because it gives you a bigger understanding of yourself.
Ian works as a graphic designer and lives independently.
Very, very proud of what he's achieved, because he's achieved so much against all the odds, and with the difficulties that he's had.
Ian was recently asked to leave a Sainsbury's because of his assistant's cat, Chloe.
She's not, she's an assistance animal. Trust me, I know my stuff. Anyway, I'm looking for ducklings. Have you got any?
This CCTV gave thousands of viewers a glimpse of the closeness of the bond between the two and showed for many people on social media Ian's reliance on his cat.
Everybody knows now that they've refused me and Chloe from visiting the store. Sainsbury's, they have got a bit of a PR disaster.
Ian's story went viral and he's now planning to take Sainsbury's to court.
Duty to make reasonable adjustments for disabled people has been the law since at least 1999.
Sainsbury's say they want to be an inclusive retailer where people love to work and shop. They say they've explained to Ian that they want to support shoppers, but have to put customer and colleague safety first and maintain their high food hygiene standards. One of the most common non-visible disabilities is chronic pain, with millions of UK sufferers.
It gradually eases off throughout the day when you're mobile. But in the evening, once you stop moving, the pain comes back and it feels like your back's on fire.
Where's Fergus? Rowan has axial SPA, an inflammatory arthritis. It's as common as ME and Parkinson's combined.
Hi guys, what are you building?
The pain from her condition can be excruciating.
I was on crutches and I just burst into tears because something as simple as breathing was so excruciating. So I went home that day and thought I would have a bath. I couldn't get back out of it for hours until my husband came home from work and he was able to help me get out of the bath.
Her disability isn't obvious and it's made her a target by members of the public.
I've actually been verbally abused by people for sitting in a disabled seat on the bus. I've also had people tell me off for using disabled toilets because there's some days where I would need handrails to help me get up and down from the toilet.
More women than men suffer from chronic pain, yet they're less likely to be treated and diagnosed. Despite countless trips to doctors and specialists, it took 5 years for Rowan's diagnosis.
I didn't fit the demographic of people with axial SPA, particularly when it was older men that I was seeing as clinicians. I even had one doctor tell me that perhaps it was a mental health problem.
Another family who fought for a diagnosis are the parents of 11-year-old Josh. They feel let down by the system as they've spent years trying to get him a place in an appropriate school.
You ready?
Yeah.
Make yourself big. Joshua is loving, he's caring, he's helpful, he's mischievous, he's all the things a normal boy is.
Oh, hell big things for you, Daddy.
His parents waited months in the education system to get him a diagnosis. In the end, they paid a psychiatrist privately to find out he is at the higher end of the autism spectrum. Josh's traits are what some experts call pathological demand avoidance.
On a bad day, swearing, shouting, punching, almost like a kind of a Jekyll and Hyde, really.
It's meant Josh's parents have been looking for another school for nearly 3 years.
The mainstream sector, a lot don't understand his invisible disability, and he gets put down as naughty. That would cause him to have meltdowns and then later led on to school refusal.
And it's been a really challenging time.
It's affected him, and to see him deteriorate and really not having that support there, it's been very hard, very hard. Sorry.
Thankfully, he now has a place and starts at a specialist school in September, but his parents have advice for others who have children with special needs.
We've stuck together, we've been strong as a family, and we've fought for a school for him.
All he's getting is what every child is entitled to.
He's got a future now.
In England, some pupils with additional needs can have up to a 5-year wait for both diagnosis and support. But complex brain conditions like Josh has aren't unique to children. There's been an apparent upsurge in adults, including high-profile women like former Love Islander Olivia Attwood, getting diagnosed with ADHD.
So it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's a terrible name because it's disorder and deficit. And we don't have a deficit of attention. It's a problem of control of that attention. And hyperactivity isn't a requirement.
There have been more than 20 billion views of ADHD-related videos on the internet. And in the UK, 130,000 people have tried an online test in the past year alone.
ADHD wasn't even recognised in the UK until the year 2000.
Common traits and symptoms include inability to properly focus and impulsive behaviour.
The knowledge that ADHD runs in families means multi-generations are also then able to get that help and support from an ADHD diagnosis.
A dramatic rise in UK prescription rates for ADHD medications means it's likely more people are being diagnosed with the condition. Some are eligible to claim PIP, which is a disability payment. Around 2 million people of working age claim disability benefits, amounting to an £11.5 billion bill. But those living with hidden disabilities know just how expensive the conditions can be.
The two main ones are personal independence payment to cover maybe additional expenses that they may have because of their disability, and the ESA, which is under the umbrella of universal credit, and that is to substitute any kind of loss of income if they cannot work due to their disability.
Like many services, the benefit system is under pressure. It can mean if you do need to start a disability claim, the delays could be forcing people who are already struggling to miss out on much-needed payments.
You have absolutely no control. How long this is going to take, what money you're going to receive, how many points they deem you to have. They're essentially then saying, this is how disabled I think you are.
Even today, I use a stick, I can't sit, stand or walk for long periods and need strong pain relief. When I was out of work, I too relied on benefits, but it didn't cover the extra personal expenses of my condition, which meant paying for specialist equipment, treatments and physiotherapy.
The extra cost of disability in this country is around £560 a month. That's money that disabled people have to spend that non-disabled people don't.
Bethan, in Bridgend's promising army career, was cut short by her ME diagnosis.
It was a very brutal and very final way to end what I'd done. I'd spent my young life aiming towards.
She has to cope with constant background fatigue.
When I do things over and above my baseline of activity, it's extreme fatigue, pain. It's more like having flu.
Wanting to help others, she retrained as a mental health counsellor and lecturer, and with some reasonable adjustments, now hopes to work part-time.
Because with my work, I can continue to afford to pay my mortgage, to live independently, but hopefully just managing the condition.
But when she relied on benefits, she found the application a nightmare.
It would take me weeks to do tiny little bits of the form because the mental process is huge. The physical process of filling in the form, but also the psychological involvement of having to write everything I could no longer do.
I found my own PIP assessment traumatic and humiliating. They ask you questions like, can you wash certain parts of your body or go to the toilet alone? Now, I know they need to ask those questions to get you the help that you need, but it was robotic and, frankly, lacking in a bit of humanity and just a little bit of compassion.
Elements of that is from an assessment from the 70s. It is archaic. It is crude. It is a snapshot of somebody's very complex and fluctuating disability. Now, the DWP, the person that looks at all that information that's been gathered, has no medical or clinical expertise, and they are the person where it lands on their desk to say, you now make a decision if this person gets any benefits.
And Lauren in County Down, Northern Ireland, has also found the benefits process challenging.
I have a long-term, lifelong, chronic disability, so it wasn't just going to get better. My brain is damaged.
10 years ago, a roller derby accident left her with a traumatic brain injury.
I did attempt to go back to work initially, and it was only after presenting at my GP with panic attacks that then I started to realise that there was more to this.
Unable to work, suffering serious long-term conditions, she needed an official benefits assessment. These assessments are carried out by a healthcare worker, not necessarily a doctor.
So you're kind of walking this tightrope between too disabled and not disabled enough, and you're given money so you can live independently, and yet if you live independently, that's like a mark against you in the assessment.
Lauren felt she was entitled to some benefits, so she decided to fight the decision at a court tribunal. Nearly £450 million worth of taxpayers' money has gone on disability benefit appeals in the past 7 years, with more than 2/3, like Lauren's, being successfully overturned.
You are made to feel like you are lying, like you have to beg to exist. It's re-traumatising, having to go to court for this small bit of money.
A Department of Communities for Northern Ireland spokesperson said the Minister's priority is to ensure those claiming PIP are treated with dignity and compassion, and there have been improvements in assessments and case audits are now in-house.
What we really need to see is some principles embedded in the system that will treat people fairly, it will treat them with kindness, and it will support them to understand their condition rather than trying to catch them out.
It's estimated over 500,000 people are dealing with the inflammatory bowel disease, an invisible disability, Crohn's, and 35-year-old Dexter Ludeman is one of them. His hidden condition has caused problems in his day-to-day life, like on one occasion going through airport security.
Because of my colostomy bag, they obviously thought it was something else I was carrying. So all the security guards pulled me out the line, took me to a room on my own, basically patted me down, took my shirt off, was rummaging around. It was actually quite humiliating.
And mid-flight on his honeymoon, he nearly got into bother with the cabin crew.
For someone who has my condition or any bowel IBD condition, if you need to go to the toilet, you need to go. And, you know, there shouldn't be any barriers to stop you doing that.
Before getting his stoma bag fitted, he found things difficult.
They couldn't see that I was ill. They didn't know the struggles I was facing every day.
I am so proud of Dexter. It was a very dark time for us, and he's come out of that, and he has used that experience to try and help others. He is so open about his hidden disability and his journey, just so that he can ensure that no one else feels as lonely as he did at that time.
It inspired his wife to set up their own recruitment company, allowing employers to see the value in people with visible and non-visible disabilities.
So I work with organisations who are really hiring people and looking at them as an individual, looking at their needs, looking at their lives, and ensuring that the work that they can offer them fulfills their life rather than takes away from it.
In Merseyside, over 160 adults with brain conditions have been helped in a back-to-work scheme.
I'm not a drinker, I've never smoked, I've never done drugs.
60-year-old John started having TIAs or mini-strokes, and his life was changed forever.
To have that many TIAs and for a registrar to come up to me and say, "This is very serious, Mr. Redmond," I was just a bit shocked.
Even though he's not legally obliged to, John declared his hidden disability in a job interview.
I was absolutely convinced that the vacancy was mine, and he rubbed his hands together and he went, "You fit?" And I went, "Well, actually, I am, but could be deemed as being disabled." And he never said anything, and I never heard from him again.
But he's now in a role that accepts him and his condition. He works at a local medical centre.
I can forget things, so I have a notebook and I write things down. This is my method of overcoming.
Hello, do you know where... And providing that support might not be as expensive as many in business may think.
There's government grants, and it's not always equipment that they need to purchase as well. And sometimes the adjustment can simply be awareness and education and an open conversation as well with the individual.
John says he feels blessed and doesn't want employers to miss out.
I'm not defined by my illness. I'm defined by my work ethic and by my values and by my character. If you give your details in there, they'll sort it out for you.
Lovely.
Thank you. And all I need is support.
A UK government spokesperson says they support millions with their compassionate service, and disabled people get the benefits and opportunities they deserve to thrive. And they get out of poverty through its Access to Work scheme that's helped 1.3 million more people into employment 5 years early. They recognise extra costs, so in addition to £1,200 of direct payments, there'll be a £150 top-up. Living with any disability is hard, especially when you can't see it.
Being positive has helped me.
Do not let your illness limit you.
Don't be scared to speak up.
That's it for tonight's programme, but if you want to continue the conversation, please join in using the hashtag ITVTonight on Twitter, as well as visiting our Facebook and Instagram pages and our website, itv.com/tonight. But for now, good evening, and thank you for watching. Coming up next week, is shoplifting on the rise? Adam Shaw has been finding out.
I know a lot of people who shoplift because they can't survive on the money that they're on, so they have to go out and make that additional money just to put food on their table for their children.
Tonight on Twitter, as well as visiting our Facebook and Instagram pages and our website, itv.com/tonight. But for now, good evening, and thank you for watching. Coming up next week, Joe Crowley investigates who and what is polluting our rivers.
And, why should we not look after it? It's very sad that it's in the condition it's in, and we just want to do our bit.
Tonight, water pollution. Who's to blame?
After heavy rain or a blockage, this will open and the raw sewage, toilet paper, wet wipes, you name it, comes out of there and goes into the River Derwent.
What effect is it having on our rivers and lakes?
It's completely devastating. There is not a single river in England that is currently listed as being in good overall environmental health.
Is enough being done to stop the polluters?
In a rural river like the Wye, you've got severe agricultural pollution. That is the result of years of allowing the farmers to do what they want to do without inspecting.
And how long do we have to put a solution in place?
The impact at the moment is on the rivers, but the impact will be on everybody when this starts to feed through into the water supply systems.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. With the warmer weather and school holidays, many of us have been out and about enjoying our rivers and lakes. But how clean are they? Joe Crowley has been investigating who and what is polluting our water.
Water is a resource we take for granted until something goes wrong. The rain may have come back this week for some of us, but parts of the country are still experiencing drought conditions, with millions of people facing hosepipe bans. But it's not just the shortage of water that's concerning, it's the quality too.
Our waterways are in a bad way, and it doesn't seem they're getting any better. But this summer, many of us have seen it firsthand, no longer hidden below the surface. The hot temperatures and the lack of rainfall have made the effects of pollution all too visible.
Algae blooms like this are destroying plant and aquatic life in our rivers.
So, who is causing all this pollution? And how are they getting away with it?
Windermere, the largest lake in England and a jewel in the crown of our countryside. But all is not well, as can be seen from the blue-green algae blooms on the surface of the water. These can be toxic to humans and animals and are caused by an excess of nutrients in the water. They can occur naturally, but it seems that's not the whole story on Lake Windermere at the moment.
So we know that the sewerage network services some of the lake, and because it's a rural catchment, we also have septic tanks, and as well, it's a farmed catchment. So we have those three sources which each contribute about a third of the nutrients into the lake.
Matt Staniak is a local campaigner.
I just wanted to see an end to sewage pollution in the Lake District. That's fundamentally what I just don't think should be happening in the National Park.
It's claimed the pollution is coming from three sources: treated and untreated sewage discharged by the area's water company, United Utilities, runoff from local agriculture, and septic tanks, which are sometimes poorly maintained by their private owners.
We're looking at antiquated infrastructures that are just being pushed past capacity, you know. We need to see an increase in infrastructure, an increase in capacity of what we can treat to be able to stop it going into the lake. That's fundamentally what I want to see.
But the water company, United Utilities, will say, well, we've invested lots of money in the quality of our treated sewage.
Well, great. You know, I love to see investment into these infrastructures, but that's treating what is treated as sewage. You know, what about the untreated sewage? And no one can tell me what volumes this sewage is being discharged, and no one can tell me what's actually coming out of these pipes. So you can see it just in front of me there. If you look down the water, it's that, you know, that cloudy green, and that's the blue-green algae. That's why I've sat my dog there well away from the pollution, because that's a sign of it. When you get lots of phosphorus into this system.
Recently, volunteers in partnership with Lancaster University took 100 water samples in one day to try to get a picture of the pollution sources in and around the lake.
The Big Windermere survey is really the largest snapshot that we have of the lake and the surrounding catchment, and it really just gave us a really good spatial picture of what is happening on the lake, both in terms of nutrient enrichment, but also in terms of bacteria that could potentially make you sick. Where are there any high concentration of those, and if there are, where are they coming from?
The water samples are currently being analysed and the results will be known this autumn. In the meantime, United Utilities is funding a project planting reed beds on the perimeter of the lake as a natural way of breaking down the nutrients in the sewage.
Reed beds are a wetland habitat, and wetlands are often referred to as the kidneys of the landscape. They filter water coming from the catchment. So all these things, agriculture and wastewater and diffuse pollution of other sorts, they are trapped and bound in places like this. And the biological processes that happen here, it's not just absorption of those things, it's also microbial processes. They're incredible things to study and be part of. It's really interesting.
So you think these really can make a difference?
Absolutely. They're a key component of a well-functioning system.
United Utilities told us they'd reduced the phosphorus in their final effluent by tenfold and increased the capacity of their sewer network, leading to a significant reduction in the frequency of spills from the storm overflows at Windermere. They said their wastewater systems around Windermere operate to the highest possible standards, following record levels of investment, and they were working with other agencies to prioritise action to improve water quality further. 130 miles down the road in the Peak District, local canoeists are clearing up the mess in the River Derwent.
Well, we often clean the river and we find all kinds of things like litter, plastic bottles, chip trays, stuff that's come off the road. Find all sorts. Things get fly tipped. I found full set of garden furniture, a sofa in the river, somebody's sock here. Find quite a few clothing items. Well, it is an endless task, but every bag of rubbish we remove from the river is one less that head down to sea. So on an average river clean, during a day we probably get 70 or 80 bagfuls. So, you know, we've saved 70 or 80 bagfuls from heading downstream. Unbranded, good as new.
It's not just litter. There's evidence of sewage being dumped.
So this here, that's a wet wipe that's come out of the sewage system. I think this is typical of an English river. I'm sure it used to be clearer than this. It's got a funny kind of brown grey tint to it, and all the rocks are really slimy.
Water companies are allowed to discharge untreated sewage into rivers and the sea, but they need a permit, and it has to be in exceptional circumstances, like when the system is overwhelmed during wet weather. However, since 2010, the privatised companies have been allowed to self-monitor and report how often they're dumping untreated sewage.
This is where CSO, combined sewage overflow, comes out from the sewage system into the river. If you look at the floor, it's littered with, you name it, wet wipes, toilet paper. After heavy rain or a blockage, the sewer will overflow rather than going into houses. This will open and the raw sewage, toilet paper, wet wipes, you name it, comes out of there and goes into the River Derwent. You'd be astounded what people flush down the toilet. That's like buried under the sand. Some stuff we just can't get.
Pete thinks we all have to do our bit to ensure the waste doesn't get into the system in the first place. But in the meantime, he and his friends will carry on doing regular river cleanups to try to preserve the beauty of the Derwent.
This river, as like most rivers in our country, you know, it's very sad that it's in the condition it's in, and we just want to do our bit.
We contacted Severn Trent, the water company that discharges into the River Derwent. They told us they were already working hard to use combined sewer overflows less and were investing £100 million a year to go even further in improving rivers. They said they'd also recruited a team of river rangers to help educate communities and monitor rivers.
Right.
Guy Linley-Adams is a solicitor who acts for the pressure group Wildfish, formerly Salmon and Trout Conservation. He says the water companies have to invest more in their infrastructure to cut down on the need to dump sewage.
Water companies are no different from other ordinary companies. They have to make profits, and if they have to invest that money in sewage works instead, they won't make as much money for their shareholders. So yes, regulation is absolutely critical.
Singer and now river campaigner Fergal Sharkey agrees. He's highly critical of water companies.
Well, it's completely devastating. There is not a single river in England that is currently listed as being in good overall environmental health. And one of the biggest sources of that pollution is the water industry. Over the last 2 years alone, they've spent almost 6 million hours dumping sewage into our rivers. It's an industry that have treated the regulator and indeed the environment with complete contempt and disdain.